Hello, our lovely nightmarish creatures. I, Shade, will be your horror narrator for this chapter of No Return. Decay will be your narrator for every other chapter after that, so I'll be your narrator for this first chapter, and she'll narrate the second, and then I'm back in the rotation, and so on. Before we begin, we would like for you guys to know that as the chapters go on, other horror narrators will be introduced along with some voice actors such as Horror on the Rocks, 242 Reads, PA Nightmares, and Alexis Vandom, just to name a few, but there will be more. Please do check them out as each video will have their links in the description below. One last thing, after 5 chapters we will have a video where it puts it all together. That way you can enjoy it as you see fit. And if you happen to get lost, don't worry, there will be a playlist to help you find them easier. I'll do my best to put all 24 chapters together for one entire video when it gets done, but it'll probably take some time to get it done. Well, I've taken enough of your time. Please enjoy tonight's creepy tale by the very talented Mario Casatelli Jr. Chapter 1. How it all began. The virtual Copperhead Company sat upon an island 90 miles off the coast of Mexico. It was a massive bioscientific lab company that was always on the verge of creating new materials for the public and deadly materials for the company's own purposes. And after countless years, a few man-made killing experiments was in the works of being created. It all began with a cloned biotissue experiment that a handful of scientists in the company created. As time passed, the tissue began to form into something unusual and became very powerful when it was combined with stem cells. It was so powerful, not a single person outside the island would be able to destroy the newly made creation. The company was also on the verge of working on 2 deadly projects. Most of the employees who worked with the company never knew these projects even existed. Like the biotissue experiment, only a handful of scientists were chosen to be part of these projects. The projects were kept so secretive and so concealed that drastic measures were taken in order to keep its existence from leaking out to the public. The chosen scientists who worked on these projects had their lives and families' lives threatened, and a new release in bomb technology was used on them. They forcefully underwent a surgery that would change their lives forever. During the surgery, a small bomb, the size of a microchip, was implanted deep inside the mainframe of their brain. If they were to say anything about the projects to anyone besides the chosen scientists or CEOs, or even bring up the topics of its existence with others besides the chosen scientists and CEOs, the bomb would trigger and obliterate the cerebrum stem. The company was dangerous and very careful not to spread too much information with the press when they came to do their monthly reports. The company did business with worldwide science laboratories, but were very selective with what they created for them. They also always seemed to have a great deal in the stock market when selling their products. The first deadly project was a nucleotide liquid chemical that had the most deadly effects when used upon organisms. It was made to kill and shut down all bodily functions. Once the body was completely dead, the chemical would reboot a small portion of the human system and reanimate the double helix DNA structure. But the organism wouldn't be the same anymore. It would become a walking corpse that would have the yearning to feed off of any other living organism. The second project was split into 2 parts. The first part was a massive machine called Project XY, and the second part was a set of 12 rockets. The CEOs of the company were planning to use this project to destroy all of humankind when the time was right for them to strike. There were steps that had to be taken and procedures that had to be done in order for things to work out smoothly for their plan to work. There were 2 CEOs of the company. The first CEO was Kevin, who was in his late 60s, and the second was Margaret, who was in her early 50s. They didn't care about anything except for their precious company, their money, and what was being created within their company. They were extremely self-centered people who thought that the world revolved around them at all times. They didn't care about the lives of their workers they employed, and they certainly didn't care about anyone else who lived outside of the island. There were 3 other people who served the 2 CEOs. They were like personal bodyguards for them. The first was a very powerful Russian male who did their dirty work and handled 90% of their workload. He'd do anything for them. He'd even take a bullet for them if it came down to that. The second person was a German spy. The CEOs only needed him when they suspected unrest within the company. They would send him out to investigate in secrecy the cause of the problems. And if it came down to murdering someone, he'd have no problem in doing so. The last person was a Russian woman who assisted the German spy and CEOs whenever they needed it. She was related to the Russian man, but didn't do as much as he did. After years of consistently working around the clock, the biotissue experiment and the chemical project were finally completed, and the second project was at the brink of completion. Soon after, the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation and the United States Secret Service had somehow found leaked information through an unknown source about the experiment and the first project. The source contained evidence on the experiment and the project's construction. They then took legal action against the company in full throttle. They had always wanted to take them down, but never could because they never had any concrete evidence that they were doing anything illegal up until now. The 2 bureaus contacted a highly classified agency to handle the situation, who then sent out 6 of their highly trained agents to kill the 2 CEOs, the 3 people that served them, and eliminate all projects within the complex before any citizen outside the island found out what was going on. The first CEO, Kevin, found out that the agents were on their way, so he did what was necessary to protect his company. He threatened one of the scientists' lives that worked on his experiment and projects and took his family hostage. This was done in order for Kevin and Margaret to conquer their dream of destroying civilization. The CEOs, Margaret and Kevin, were going to hit the United States on Independence Day and figured that if they were going to hit the country with everything that they had, they were going to go out with a bang. The plan was to give the nation a taste of the island's own fireworks and light it up like one giant fireworks display. No one knew about their plan, and no one knew they were going to strike on July 4th. This was a plan that they had constructed for many years. They thought this would be a magnificent idea and would be very creative. No one was going to ruin it for them. The chosen scientist was to follow specific instructions given by the CEOs of the company to unleash the deadly chemical and fuse it with the biotissue, releasing it into the water supply system. In doing this, the deadly liquid chemical would infect the biotissue, causing a chain reaction to make a more powerful effect when it contaminated the water. In order to get the scientist to do what was ordered by the CEOs, the Russian worker locked his family in a heavily guarded gas chamber. Also, he had a microchip bomb implanted in his brain too, but the CEOs wanted a more maleficent effect, just for the fun of it. In order for this to work with the 2 CEOs, the 2 Russians and Germans survived, everyone had to be sacrificed and no questions were to be asked. Let's go back to when the disaster took place and explain from the very beginning what had happened that day, step by step. But most importantly, let's look over what the chosen scientist had done for the evil CEOs.
Hello, Pete. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm sure you're wondering what we have here in this small bottle, and I'm sure you know by now what it is.
I've done what you asked. Now, please, agree to your end of the bargain and let my family go.
Certainly.